Would you like to learn about how to make custom features like these and cause them to naturally spawn in the world like this? If so, you're in the right place. So to get started here, you'll need a data pack that has a custom dimension in it. You can use the one that we made in the last tutorial, or you can use the one that is in the description. And then we're going to run this command right here to get into our custom dimension. So last episode, we messed around with a bunch of default features, things like trees, melon patches, lots of trees, flowers, stuff like that. But this episode, we're going to be making our own custom features. So first thing we have to do is go inside of our dimension data pack here into the world.gen folder, and we're going to add a new folder here, and it's going to be called configured. Notice it's not called custom, configured feature. And then we're going to make a file to save into that folder. So it's going to be a pretty simple file. We're just going to put type in quotation marks like that. We'll put Minecraft simple block like that. And then we're going to tell it what block we want it to place. We're just working with it just places like a single block here. So it's going to be super, super easy. So we open up config, and then we put another option here called to place, which we open up as well. And then we put another type in here, which will be Minecraft simple state provider. And then in the state is where we're actually going to put the block. So we're just going to do something really easy. We'll do name, and then we'll do Minecraft stone. And then we're going to save it. And you want to make sure you're inside of the configured feature folder. I'm just going to call mine simpleblock.json. You can call it whatever you want, just make sure you remember it, because we will need it in a moment here. Now go ahead and back out of Minecraft, and then go back in. All right, and now once we're in here, we can use a very, very useful command, place feature, and then you put the name of your data pack, which in my case is Talon dim, because that's funny. And then this is the name of the file, the file that we just made. And if I press enter here, look at that. Custom feature. Sound the alarms. It's amazing. It's a single block. It's really boring. So let's say you're like, okay, that's too boring of a block. I want to make this look different. So we can go back to our file. And this is really just to give you some practice with trial and error, because that is going to be very important today. But let's say you're like, I want something a little bit more interesting. So we'll try a dried kelp block. Save the file. Once again, we save and quit to title to reload. And if we press slash and up, we get the last command we did. And look at that, the feature is updated. So obviously with a single block, it's not really changing that much, but when we start changing more things, it'll be very, very useful to have this place command to troubleshoot and to test how things look. So we're gonna move on to the next step here, which is a little bit more advanced feature. And because of that, we're going to be using an advanced data pack generator website made by Mysode, potentially one of the most helpful people in the commands and data pack world, because he made this site and some other things we'll use. So we're going to select the vegetation patch here, and there's some options we can change. So this is the point where I want you to start thinking about how is this going to be connected with the world. So you see our first option here, surface. This decides whether the vegetation patch is on the floor or the ceiling, so you could have hanging vines, or you could have, just a regular vegetation patch. I'm gonna pick floor. You can do whichever one you want. I just want you thinking about how is it connected to the world? How is it going to look? So in keeping with that mindset, imagining this feature, we have the XZ radius, so that's like the horizontal radius. How big do we want this patch to be? Do we want it to be huge, or do we want it to be kind of like a medium-sized patch? You can select some more advanced number options. We're just going to do constant for now, but those options do exist, just so you know. So I'll pick 4 here. And given that it's a radius of 4, I can choose the vegetation chance. So it won't necessarily place a vegetation feature in every single block. So if I do 0.1, there's a 10% chance for each block to have that feature. So depending on how patchy you want it, I think I'll just go with 0.3. And the other simple one here is ground state. So what do we want the ground to be? In my case, we have a bunch of leaves. So let's see, what kind of leaf do we want? I think I was using jungle leaves, so I'll pick jungle leaves for that. Now this option, replaceable. That's not immediately obvious what that is. So we're going to go to a link that's in the description. This is to the Minecraft wiki. We're going to scroll all the way down until we get to vegetation patch. Oh, this is the same thing we're working on here. And look at this. We can see more information on the options that we're changing. So the replaceable, it's a block tag with a hash specifying what blocks this feature can replace. Okay, so that makes sense. You definitely want to get comfortable reading this wiki, because if you do very much custom features, you're going to be using it for a lot of things. But anyway, now that we know what that replaceable is going to do, we can pick something that we want the feature to replace. But I think that I pretty much just want the feature to actually replace air. So we're going to do this hashtag Minecraft air, which I think includes like void air and cave air. And there's only one important thing left, vegetation feature. And this is why I wanted you to remember that name. So we're gonna go from reference to inline. Our configured feature is gonna be the one we made. So that's just your data pack and then the name of your feature. And then for placement, we actually don't really want it to do anything special. So we're just gonna delete all that and it will still be valid. And then we can do something cool over here. You see that it's made like a little file for us. So you can either download it, or what I like to do is copy, and then in a new file, we paste that in. I'm gonna call mine vegetation patch, and it's gonna be a JSON file. You can call it whatever you want. Now this is where trial and error is going to come into play. So if we place our feature, this one we're gonna want to place on the ground, and I'll even go down one block. Failed to place feature. Now, depending on what blocks you used, yours actually might have worked. But in the vegetation patch, it has a unique quirk where you can't use or you can't place on top of leaves. But when we switch it to emerald blocks, all of a sudden, it works. And because of that, it's really important you're comfortable with trial and error to figure out how each custom feature works. Because there's way too many custom features. You can put all of these in your world. There's way too many custom features to memorize all of the unique quirks by heart. You're gonna have to use trial and error, so it's important that you get comfortable with it now. So our last configured feature should be a bit of a fun challenge here. We're gonna go to tree. I know everyone wants to make custom trees, right? Well, this is how you do it. Now, at this point, I want you to start thinking outside of the box. Things don't have to be used for their intended purpose, particularly for custom features. You only really have to pay attention to what function do they do. So we have a dirt provider, something that puts dirt underneath the tree in quotation marks. We have a trunk provider, which I'm just gonna have, it'll be deep slate. And then we have a foliage provider, which does the blocks on top. So I'm gonna make kind of an underground tree. It's not like a crazy out of the box thing or anything, but you can go pretty crazy if you want to. Now I'm intentionally leaving a key thing blank, so you'll have to use trial and error. What should we use for our trunk size? Again, we're kind of thinking out of the box, so it's like this is going to be in a cave. It's going to have diamond, and then we have a deep slate trunk. So forking, I think, is actually probably going to look the coolest here. And then for our foliage, the foliage is the diamond, so how should we have that looking? I'm thinking pine will have a really interesting shape we could work with. Crown height, we actually probably don't want to make that very big. I think radius we can leave it like something smallish. And hopefully this is really opening your eyes to just how crazy some of these features are. This is a decorator we can do. I'm going to do attached to leaves because that's probably the coolest one. This is going to be a diamond block. We're going to have diamonds that literally grow on trees here. We're going to do, you know, a low probability, and the exclusion radius I actually want to be kind of, we'll do something like that. And then the direction we want it to be attached to the leaves, in quotes, is down, so hanging underneath them. So now we have a full thing with one sort of error in it that you'll have to trial and error your way out of. We'll copy this and paste it into a new file. Save it as whatever JSON file name you want. I'll call it money tree. And here is our derp money tree. You can see it worked really well. And if you want to puzzle it out for yourself, you can pause the video here before I go back into the file. Whoops, that was supposed to be diamond door, not diamond block. All right, so you ready? You can't have 0 in the base height. That doesn't work. And you certainly can't have 0 in these other ones if you have 0 in the base height. You get a really weird tree if you have 0 in the base height and and you have numbers here. You could try that out if you want. But yeah, these can't be 0. Unless, of course, I suppose you want a tree with a height of 0. But now if we place our tree, look at that. We have a money tree with like little diamond blocks hanging off of it and like layers of diamond ore that we can mine. So this would be a really cool feature to find in like a cave or something. But you can see how we've taken a tree and turned it into something completely different with a totally different purpose. And you can go far crazier than this, of course. So yeah, there's a lot of outside the box thinking that can be done. So now it is time to stop placing them manually. We're gonna make this automatic for both our features here, and we're gonna start by working with our vegetation. So in your world gen folder, you're gonna make another new folder, and this one is gonna be called placed feature. This is the placing rules. Now conveniently, MySode also has the placed feature in here, so we can open this up. And just for teaching purposes, we're gonna close these two out, and I just wanna show you how each of these work. So for starters, we're just gonna put in the simple block feature here, and for the count, we're gonna put it up to something big. 100. You can go up to 256, I think, for a single count. So what count looks like, if we go to the bottom of the world here and turn on chunk borders, where's the corner? You'll notice there's a single kelp block. If I break this, there's nothing above or to the sides or anything. So what count is doing here is it's picking the starting location 100 times. So it says put 100 kelp blocks. But since it's the same location, there's just one. So okay, obviously we need to do a little bit more than that. So what we're gonna do here is add in square. So you can already see what it's doing. It's taken all of those blocks that were in the corner and it's given them a random offset in X and Z. So that means it's spread them throughout the chunk here. You'll notice there's not 100 blocks that have been placed, and that's because there's potentially still some overlap. It could be picking this location, 3 times or something, and this one twice. And then we can modify each of those positions further. There's a lot of options here, and there's a link in the description where you can read more about them. I'm just going to use a simple one, height map. And we're going to use motion blocking, ignore leaves. And you can see it now follows the contour of the surface. With an interesting side note, you'll notice how some of these stack up. That's because if it picks a spot more than once, the new motion blocking spot with no leaves has now moved up one to this spot. And then if it picks this spot again, it's like, oh, up here. And so it just keeps stacking them. So that's kind of a cool little thing. Very visual way to see which ones are getting picked multiple times. But now we can turn that into our vegetation patch. So we'll just change this to vegetation patch, and we'll give it a more reasonable count because we probably don't want that many patches. Maybe like 5. And just like before, we're going to copy this file, or you can download it, make a new file, paste, save it in the placed feature folder. And I like to name mine with place in front. So place vegetation patch, and this is again a JSON file. And what's different here is we're going to open up the biome definition, scroll all the way to the bottom where we see all these things, and then we're going to just see which thing our feature fits into. In my experience, if in doubt, usually just go to the second to last one, vegetal decoration. And then we're going to open up the custom biome that we want this feature to be in. In my case, it's custom biome 1. And we scroll down until we see the features, and we recognize this pattern. We go to the second to last one. You can see that's where I had my test set up. And we put in the placed feature file that we want the biome to generate when it generates. And then one last thing is we want to go to the world, not the data pack. There's a dimensions folder here. We're going to delete the dimension. Make sure you've loaded out of the world. And that just lets us regenerate with all the new things that we added. So I actually had to combine 2 placed features here. These empty spots are actually the simple block that we started with that I was kind of demonstrating. And the vegetation patch is the actual kelp. And you can see there's roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 patches in each chunk. So it's working about what we'd expect. And last thing, we're going to make the tree spawn in. So we'll put money tree. We're going to do pretty much the same thing. I'll show you a couple of new ones here. So we'll do same thing count, same thing for in square. And instead of height map, we're going to go height range. Because remember, we want like a cave tree. We'll set this to be uniform, which lets us have a range. We'll just do some relatives. So we'll do like one block below the bottom, and then we'll do the absolute highest it could be is, say, 60, which will be just a little bit below the surface. So that should go from negative 63, I think, or 62 to 60, positive 60. And then the next thing we're going to add is we're going to add a check for a block, because I figure this is a useful one that you might want to use. So I want to show you how to use it. So we have to pick a predicate here, and there's a lot of options, a lot of good options I will mention. So we can do like, we can match a specific block. We can match fluids. We can check if it's replaceable, if it's just solid, if it's unobstructed. So we want to select all of. We're going to have two matching block checks here. So the first one is it even air at all? We don't want it to place the tree just in the middle of something. Although you totally could actually, and that would be an interesting out of the box approach. It would basically be a vein of iron, but using a totally different strategy. We'll just go with what we're going with already. So it'll check for air, and then one block below, it'll check for our cave block, which is not stone. We actually have glowstone in our special world. So it does a double check to see if it can place the tree. And this last check is just kind of, I'll call it a for fun one. You might find this one useful. It just checks if it's in the biome that it was supposed to be in, so it doesn't go too far outside of the biome, basically. So I'll turn this into a file. And once again, we'll come in here. We can call this vegetation. You could also call it an ore, which would put it 1, 2, 3 at this one. And actually, just for variety's sake, why don't we do that? Realistically, it'll work in both of them. Where you put it in here is not quite as important as you think. And if we head down here to check it out, you'll notice it's pretty rare. You don't really see them in very many locations, even though we're placing like 4 per chunk, because it's doing that block predicate check, which checks for the glowstone and then the air above. So a lot of the checks are probably ending up, here, or maybe in the middle of it, like 2 air blocks next to each other. And only with that perfect combo can it generate our little money tree, which is kind of a cool little find. You got some diamond blocks hanging off some diamond ore. Like, this would be a juicy, juicy find. But yeah, really rare. You can see the next one is like all the way over there. I don't even see any other ones close by besides that. So when you put in more checks, more placement checks, it definitely restricts it further and further depending on which ones you use. And that's why I gave you that reference thing so you can look up and see what they all do. But there you have it, custom features. Very, very cool addition, very important addition, I think, to any custom biome, any custom dimension. It can vary your landscape so much just with a few simple features. So definitely look into all those custom features that you can adjust. Hint, hint, there's even geodes you can change. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And I think it'd be really cool if you post in the comments your unique use of some custom feature. It might inspire other people that are watching this video to use these features in new and interesting ways. But that is going to do it from me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on custom features, and let me know if there's more things you want to learn about in the comments. There's definitely a few more things in custom dimensions that I could make tutorials on, but yeah, that'll be it from me. So I'll catch you next time. Later, later.